U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10% tariff on Canadian energy.
Energy for some reaction. It's a bit of a mixed bag. We see crude under a little bit of pressure.
10% tariff on Canadian oil could have really big energy consequences across markets and lead to higher prices for consumers. So
$1 trillion shock. Trump's tariffs just backfired, and America's oil empire is crumbling before our eyes. In a stunning turn of events, President Trump's 10% energy tariff has detonated a geopolitical bombshell. In less than 6 months, Canada and Qatar have quietly redrawn the global energy map, severing America's dominance in natural gas and crude oil exports. Refineries are choking, prices are surging, and longtime allies are turning their backs. What was meant to be a bold move to protect U.S. energy has backfired into an international crisis. Imagine this: the U.S., once the world's unrivaled energy titan, now scrambling to retain even a fraction of its market influence. While the administration focused on short-term wins, strategic rivals made moves that could alter global power dynamics for decades. And while Americans debated tariffs on Twitter, Canada and Qatar rewired the global energy map without firing a single shot. If you're here for no fluff, hard-hitting breakdowns of global power shifts, smash that subscribe button now. Let's break down the 5 brutal moves that have shattered America's energy dominance and why this damage might be irreversible. Number 5, the tariff that triggered a chain reaction. It all started with a number, 10%. That was the tariff slapped on Canadian crude oil and gas imports right after Trump's second inauguration. On paper, it was a show of strength. In reality, it was a grenade. Canada had long been America's most stable energy partner, supplying up to 4 million barrels of oil per day. This accounted for nearly half of U.S. crude oil imports. But when the tariff hit, everything changed. Overnight, Canadian exporters were pushed to look east, not south. Ottawa didn't protest loudly. It acted, and fast. Redirecting energy exports away from the U.S., Canada began making deals with Europe and Asia. LNG terminals, once dedicated to American shipments, were suddenly loading cargo bound for Germany, France, and India. Leaked Canadian strategy memos from 2023 suggest Ottawa had contingency plans to reduce U.S. dependency long before the tariff hit, quietly waiting for the right trigger. Whispers from insiders suggested Canada had been planning an energy pivot since 2023, but Trump's tariffs gave them the perfect excuse to execute it faster. Suddenly, American refiners weren't just paying more, they were losing guaranteed supply. Layoffs began trickling in. Refineries reduced output. Energy-intensive industries faced higher costs, rippling through sectors like manufacturing and agriculture. Did Trump unknowingly accelerate Canada's energy independence with one reckless decision? What was once considered an unbreakable North American energy alliance fractured in mere months. But that was just the first domino to fall. Number 4, Canada's energy breakout, a new oil map. With Trump's tariffs still reverberating, Canada went full throttle. The LNG Canada project at Kitimat launched ahead of schedule. A $40 billion infrastructure play, including the 670-kilometer Coastal GasLink pipeline, connected Western gas fields straight to the Pacific, bypassing the U.S. entirely. The result? Canada, once seen as a junior energy partner, emerged as a sovereign energy powerhouse. By mid-2025, the first shipments of Canadian LNG were docking in European ports. The International Energy Agency recorded a 23% YOY surge in European LNG imports, much of it now coming from Canada. Long-term contracts were signed. For the first time in decades, the U.S. was being cut out of its own backyard. Rumors swirled that European leaders had privately urged Ottawa for years to cut its dependency on the U.S. Trump's tariff was simply the green light. Internal documents leaked from Brussels hinted that Canada was seen as a strategic hedge against future U.S. unpredictability years before Trump's second term. Canada didn't stop at just LNG. Crude oil shipments also pivoted. Europe, desperate to replace sanctioned Russian oil, eagerly absorbed Canadian barrels. New shipping lanes opened across the Atlantic, and Canadian crude discounts attracted buyers worldwide. Meanwhile, U.S. gasoline prices surged. Eastern states recorded increases of 40 cents per gallon in less than a month. Consumers felt the squeeze, but so did industries reliant on cheap energy inputs. Steel production costs rose. Food processing costs climbed. Manufacturing hubs in Michigan and Ohio saw ripple effects. Stellantis announced over 4,500 layoffs tied directly to higher energy costs and supply disruptions. Was Canada's loyalty to the U.S. already fading before the tariffs hit? Canada had not only found new customers, it had redefined its global energy posture. And while Canada carved a new future, another player made an even bolder move. Number 3. Qatar seizes the global LNG crown. While Washington was distracted, Doha was executing a masterstroke. Already the world's lowest-cost LNG producer, Qatar accelerated its North Field expansion. From 77 million tons in 2024, it aims to hit 142 million by 2030, an 85% leap. In October 2023, Qatar signed a 27-year deal to supply France with 3.5 million tons per year. A week later, Shell inked another long-term agreement with Doha. These weren't just contracts, they were declarations. The EU, once reliant on Russian pipelines and partial to U.S. LNG, now had a new king. Qatar filled the post-Russia vacuum faster than anyone expected. Even more impressively, it navigated strict EU environmental laws by exploiting policy exemptions and leveraging its reputation for low-carbon supply chains. Some insiders speculate Qatar had secret pre-negotiations with Germany months before Trump announced his energy tariffs. Unconfirmed reports suggest Qatar is quietly acquiring stakes in key European LNG terminals, locking in influence far beyond mere supply contracts. And just like that, the U.S. found itself sidelined in a market it once led. Was Qatar simply better prepared, or was Washington blindsided by its own allies? Qatar's move wasn't just strategic, it was calculated. Recognizing Europe's desperation after cutting off Russian supplies, Doha leveraged its position to lock in 20 to 30-year contracts, terms that guaranteed Qatar a dominant foothold for a generation. At the same time, Qatar invested heavily in expanding its export infrastructure. New terminals, upgraded shipping fleets, and strategic partnerships with European ports ensured Doha could deliver efficiently and cheaply, a one-two punch the U.S. couldn't match. Meanwhile, Washington faced growing bottlenecks at home. Number 2, America's export crisis, bottlenecks, and broken promises. It wasn't just foreign deals that hurt. It was America's inability to deliver. Despite ballooning global demand for LNG, the U.S. lacked the infrastructure to meet it. Export terminals were already maxed out. Pipelines were overstretched. New facilities? Not ready until 2026 or later. Meanwhile, domestic energy prices surged. Natural gas prices jumped 80% year-on-year. Households in the eastern U.S. saw heating bills skyrocket by hundreds of dollars. While America was shipping gas overseas to assert global dominance, its own citizens were freezing. Shockingly, multiple U.S. energy executives admitted off-record that they warned the White House about export bottlenecks back in 2022 and were ignored. A leaked CERA Week 2025 white paper accused major pipeline firms of lobbying to delay expansion, betting that domestic shortages would spike their profits. The paradox was brutal. The U.S. had supply, but couldn't get it out fast enough. Canada and Qatar, with agile infrastructure and long-term vision, raced ahead. Was this an avoidable disaster? If Washington had just listened? The headlines were brutal. U.S. LNG bottlenecks jeopardize energy dominance. Families pay the price for export push. Even major U.S. energy players began sounding the alarm. Industry executives at CERA Week 2025 warned that without urgent investment in pipelines and terminals, the U.S. risked losing its LNG leadership position permanently. Meanwhile, competitors continued to eat away at market share. And then came the final humiliation. Number 1, the fall of U.S. energy dominance. By mid-2025, the European Union had decisively shifted. Brussels signed multi-decade contracts with Ottawa and Doha. U.S. market share in European LNG, once 45%, began to collapse. Europe was building a new energy corridor, and the U.S. wasn't in it. Behind closed doors, EU negotiators reportedly told American counterparts, "We can't wait for you anymore." Classified EU energy strategy documents revealed plans to gradually replace even Qatari LNG with accelerated investments in Norway and North Africa, ensuring maximum independence from foreign pressure. U.S. futures hit $4 per MMBTU, the highest spike in years. Domestic stockpiles fell. Infrastructure lagged. And while Washington clung to tariffs and old alliances, the world moved on. Is America facing not just economic decline, but diplomatic abandonment too? This wasn't just an energy shift. It was a geopolitical realignment. America, once the undisputed energy hegemon, was being bypassed by design. The impacts went beyond energy. Losing control of global energy flows meant losing diplomatic leverage, trade negotiations, military alliances, and regional influence, all weakened by America's declining energy dominance. Final thoughts. Trump's 10% tariff wasn't just a policy error, it was a strategic miscalculation that triggered an energy exodus. Canada built new lanes. Qatar seized new markets, and the U.S., trapped by outdated policy and crumbling infrastructure, was left behind. This isn't about oil. It's about control. And right now, that control is slipping through America's fingers. A leaked EU energy report in mid-2025 bluntly stated, the United States is no longer a reliable primary supplier. Without urgent action, massive infrastructure investments, smart alliances, and a reset of protectionist strategies, the U.S. risks being permanently sidelined in the new global order. Will America adapt fast enough, or will future generations only remember it as the energy giant that fell asleep at the wheel? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want no-fluff, real-world breakdowns like this before the mainstream catches up, hit subscribe and stay with us. The next shockwave is already coming.